The most merciful thing in the world, I think, is the inability of the human mind to correlate all its contents. We live on a placid island of ignorance in the midst of black seas of infinity, and it was not meant that we should voyage far. The sciences, each straining in its own direction, have hitherto harmed us little. But someday the piecing together of dissociated knowledge will open up such terrifying vistas of reality and of our frightful position therein that we shall either go mad from the revelation or flee from the deadly light into the peace and safety of a new dark age. This is the opening line of Call of Cthulhu that introduced us to Lovecraft's most famous creation, Great Cthulhu. And in this story for the first time is used the term Great Old Ones. But what are the Great Old Ones? In the extended mythos, generally the Great Old Ones are depicted as godlike entities, just a step beneath the outer gods, but in the original mythos, things are far more complicated. The term is used for two races, the Elder Things and the Cthulhu spawn. So let's start getting into them. Long ago, roughly around 1 billion years ago, an ancient raceland upon the juvenile Earth that will change the planet forever. 6 feet end to end, 3 5/10 feet central diameter, tapering to 1 foot at each end, like a barrel with 5 bulging ridges in place of staves. Lateral breakages, as of thinnish stalks, are at equator in middle of these ridges. In furrows between ridges are curious growths, combs, or wings that fold up and spread out like fans, which gives almost 7-foot wing spread. Arrangement reminds one of certain monsters of primal myth, especially fabled Elder Things in the Necronomicon. With their mastery over biology and genetic engineering, they shaped the Earth, filling it with all the ancestors of today's life forms and using them as pack animals. But the length of their technology doesn't stop here. They can manipulate atoms and use technology that works on an unknown principle of energy. These beings reproduce themselves via spores. In fact, they resemble more vegetable life rather than animal life. Their body, even though made of normal matter, are able to endure the vacuum of space, and with their wings, flying in the ether and sustain the most powerful pressure of the deepest ocean. Lovecraft described their society and daily life as follows. In furnishing their homes, they kept everything in the center of the huge rooms, leaving all the wall spaces free for decorative treatment. Lighting, in the case of the land inhabitants, was accomplished by a device probably electrochemical in nature. Both on land and underwater, they used curious tables, chairs, and couches like cylindrical frames, for they rested and slept upright with folded down tentacles and racks for hinged sets of dotted surfaces forming their books. Government was evidently complex and probably socialistic, though no certainties in this regard could be deduced from the sculptures we saw. There was extensive commerce, both local and between different cities, certain small flat counters, 5-pointed and inscribed, serving as money. Probably the smaller of the various greenish soapstones found by our expedition were pieces of such currency. Though the culture was mainly urban, some agriculture and much stock raising existed. Mining and a limited amount of manufacturing were also practiced. Travel was very frequent, but permanent migration seemed relatively rare, except for the vast colonizing movements by which the race expanded. For personal locomotion, no external aid was used, since in land, air, and water movement alike, the Old Ones seemed to possess excessively vast capacities for speed. Loads, however, were drawn by beasts of burden, shoggoths under the sea, and a curious variety of primitive vertebrates in the later years of land existence. They engaged in war with all the major races on the planet, the Cthulhu spawn, the Migo, and the great race of Yeath, and resisted, but were ultimately defeated by the Shoggoths, their own creations. Now let's talk about Cthulhu and his spawn. Long ago, around 500 million S, a race descended on Earth from the cosmic ocean. A race shaped like octopi. This race will be called the Cthulhu spawn. Which leader is Great Cthulhu? Cthulhu's most famous depiction is in the story Call of Cthulhu, represented as, if I say that my somewhat extravagant imagination yielded simultaneous pictures of an octopus, a dragon, and a human caricature, I shall not be unfaithful to the spirit of the thing. A pulpy, tentacled head surmounted a grotesque and scaly body with rudimentary wings. But it was the general outline of the whole which made it most shockingly frightful. Cthulhu, like its spawn, are not composed of matter via their status of being beyond our universe, which gave them an advance against the elder things, which were strictly material. In fact, any damage done to their bodies is useless via this particular characteristic. They also possess great telepathic ability. In fact, they are able to know everything that happened in the universe and communicate with humans via dreams. Currently, they reside in the Pacific Ocean, in their city Relia, in a death-like state, preserved by Cthulhu's magic, waiting and dreaming for when the stars will become right again. The position of the stars is very important for Cthulhu's spawn, because only when they are right can they live and travel. Cthulhu is a very known entity in Mythos. In fact, he is worshipped by the Mygo, the Deep One, the Kenyanians, the various cults on Earth, and other minor races. The timeline of the events regarding Cthulhu descending on Earth is pretty dubious. The reasoning I say this is via analyzing both the stories The Mound and At the Mountain of Madness. We know from The Mound that the Kenyanians were brought on Earth by Cthulhu to a time period that ranged between 4 to 2.8 billion years old. How can I say that? Because in the story, it's specifically that they were brought on Earth when the crust of Earth was fit for life, which fall in that umbrella of years, while in story At the Mountain of Madness, we know that the Cthulhu spawn arrived most likely after continental drifting, so around 200 million years ago. So we have a big contradiction, but it might just be a retcon after all from the story Shadow. Over time, we know that the flying polyps that dominate the Earth 600 million years ago, something never mentioned in At the Mountain of Madness. In fact, we know that the elder things dominated the Earth till the arrival of the Cthulhu spawn, and we also know that in the Mound, the reason of the sinking of Relia is due to a so-called race of space devils, while At the Mountain of Madness is due to natural causes. Even though it might just be an incorrect knowledge claim made by Wilmarth, there is also a question if really Cthulhu himself descended on Earth, because at the Mountain of Madness, specifically it stated that his spawn descended and not him. In an ultimate conclusion, the Great Old Ones is a broader term that Lovecraft probably forgot to use in the story forward and change it with the use of Old Ones. And yes, this was all an excuse to yap on elder things and Cthulhu. My bad, I like them a lot. I hope you liked the video, and we will see in the next one.